Welcome to Lee Pitts Live on Fox 4. We're here on the corner of Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard and Palm in the Dunbar community, which is in the city of Fort Myers, Florida, nestled in the southwest quadrant of the state of Florida. This is the largest African-American community in this part of the country. And every year on Easter, there's a historic Easter parade that comes down this street and makes this turn. Lee Pitts Live will be covering it from end to end today. It'll be the first time a television show has covered the entire parade, and we're so proud to be a part of that. This is the 2019 parade, and this is Easter Sunday. And what a great day to have the one of the landmark role models who has come out of this community, gone on to make us proud, then returned back to the community where he's an outstanding football coach, and now he's coaching at the high school level. That would be one Earnest Graham, the legend. Earnest, welcome to Lee Pitts Live, man.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, bro, I must say that I appreciate you taking your time. I know people are always pulling at you from all angles, but I think when it comes down to community and communicating and getting your message out, you're always open to being available to the public, huh?
Oh, definitely. That was the way I was raised. Most of the members of my families were committed to the community. We're businessmen in the community. We're philanthropists in the community. So it's natural. It's really natural for me. So I'm just following the example that was laid out for me.
And you're doing a great job. How many children do you have? I see your son here.
I have two. My daughter Ayana, she's 15, and my son Miles is 13.
Okay, Miles, I know you work at camera. Miles, come around here for a second. I want to get you on TV. Just stand right in here and kneel down. You know where the camera is, Miles. Get down so you about our head length. Now you on TV. Let me get a moment with Miles before you go back. Family values. Miles, I know you grew up seeing your dad being in the spotlight. Tell me about that emphasis that he places on academics.
It's the most important thing over everything, over sports, because sports only takes you so far, and academics can take you farther.
What are some things you hear from people about your dad and things that he's been able to accomplish over the years? Is it just football? They talk about his character and what type of person he is.
Talk about what type of person he is and how he carried himself through the hallways and at school and all of that.
Great role model for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me let you go back over there and do some camera work. All right. So we got the whole family out here. He's actually running camera. My camera guy will be here in about an hour. Earnest, when I know you all smiled when you saw your little boy doing that. Tell us a little bit about your son before we get too far down the road.
Just like most parents, you look for your son, for your kids to make you proud. First and foremost, to represent the family and what your family values are, and you look for him to go out to be an example as well. Out in the community. He's done a great job of that. And like most kids, it's a learning process. We try to extol wisdom. So I try to let him see me listening to, peers such as yourself and others in the community. And it makes it a lot easier, for him to listen to some of the things that we're saying. So, repairing the links in the chain is big. And and he has to understand that he's a link, in the chain before he could be ultimately powerful in the way he has to really, to be a link in the chain when it comes to the community
and I think that message permeates through all the things that you do when it relates to the youth at the high school level and everything that you do. You emphasize that. I let people know that before he came on camera when I was talking to Ernest Graham's son, I said, I bet your dad leads with academics being first priority, even though he's been extremely successful as an athlete. That is the case, right?
That is the case. Yeah.
And you were able to embrace academics at a young age.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was something that my mom and a lot of teachers, made, a priority for me. I can name countless teachers, Marie Perry at Suncoast Elementary, a number of the teachers that I had, throughout middle school, throughout high school, people who really guided me that, academics came first before athletics. And I always try to tell most kids that, the type of player that I was, I was really a student of the game, and who I was as a player mirrored who I was as a student in the classroom. And most of the time when it came to my competition, I beat out my competition because I was a better student, not because it was some kind of edge I had athletically, but it was mental, so that was big for me.
and I want to make sure I establish you, even though we started off Warp Speed, went to the Sun, people who are looking at us all around the country because of social media now,
That's
we
right.
everywhere. Let's establish who you are. You were a standout basketball player, football player, and baseball player. Went on to become a professional football player. You started your football here in Little League here in Fort Myers, Dunbar community that's produced a lot of great athletes. I had you on my show from the time you were a little boy. You reminded me you came on my show as a baseball player.
Yep.
Then you came back years later as a football player.
That's right.
I remember having all those Little League baseball players on the show. And of course, I never know what y'all would grow up to become.
Right.
And then you went on to become an NFL star and playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Went on to play for the University of Florida, the Florida Gators, standout football player there. High school football star here and Mr. Football for the state of Florida, if I recall. See, I'm keeping up with you, man. You were you broke a lot of records. I know, but go Little League for me, and then high school where you played, and then take us through that right quick so the TV audience will know one Earnest Graham in more detail.
Yeah, definitely. You know, here in Little League, I played for the Dunbar. I was
Running back?
for Dunbar Little League. I played baseball. Sorry.
Okay.
For Dunbar Little League. So, I played at what would have been, the Stars Complex later on, but early on I played at what would have been back at the old rec.
The old rec, they called it, right.
I also played over here at what was Roberto Clemente over there in my community, right by Dunbar Community High School, is where I first played T-ball. And then also I played for the Fort Myers Rebels, out at Pagefield. That's where most of us grew up and played, when we were younger. And I also played basketball. I got all my skills from what would be what we call the old gym that was right there at Dunbar Community School when we went there for Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it was a gym there.
I didn't know gym, they tore it down.
It was a gym
is
there.
that back where the library is now?
Yeah, it was right by the library. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a gym there. So, we got, I grew up going there, and, most of those guys that lived in the community, from Jones Walker, and me and Greg Spires was a kind of a older counselor, there at the gym. And, that's where that's where we played basketball at. So, you get all those things from the community. That it was something where where you freely played and you purely played, So, during our time, it was really a lot of focus on athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a lot of people, kind of talk about, who was the best football player, who was the best basketball. But during our time, it was a real focus on athletics, So I always saw myself as a total athlete. As a total, even as a football player, I played multiple positions. As a baseball player, I played multiple positions. So we focused on the development, because that's how we played in the streets.
Would you say that still, based on what you're just saying, that being multifaceted in sports benefits each sport that you play in,
Without
playing
a doubt.
different sports? Because just to share a little information with people, you might not know this either, Ernest, if you know some basic stuff. But I was a standout basketball player, first seed tennis player, of course a swimmer, played tennis early on.
I remember you were big on swimming.
Right.
I do remember that
Right.
too.
And so this is all through elementary school, high school, and when I got onto the basketball court, my feet were much faster than everybody else because I've been chasing tennis balls since I was a little boy.
Right.
So I when I look back, all that cross training really benefited me. And even in my jump shot, just being able to maneuver myself in the air and be comfortable in the air, even if I got pushed or whatever, I had a lot of body control. And I attributed that to my days on the diving team, springboard diving, and in trampolining, where I had a lot of body control when I was a little boy. I said all that to say to you, elaborate on some of that cross training and how you can see that making it, like you say, a total athlete. We saw that in Deion Sanders.
Right.
We see a lot of the people who become big time, but most of those people who are big time, they played multiple sports on their way up, and they chose a sport, right?
No question. I mean, the people who make it are usually guys who are total athletes. And in all these different sports, I mean, you're training your body, to process and respond in multiple different ways. There's in each individual sports, there's, kind of like you say, there's also a crossover mentally, in regards to you having to respond to a critical situation, in regards to you having to respond to pressure, So, when you're playing in a game and you're always constantly rehearsing, how to win, not just having to, not just having to want to win, but just rehearsing how to win, how to put yourself in position to win. There was a reference to chess earlier, and sports is a lot like that. When you've done that a million different ways in a million different sports, it becomes easy, and not only does it become easy, you become creative in the way that you play. So a lot of great players like we bring Deion Sanders up all the time. A lot of guys were great athletes, so they could really take the game and expound upon it, as opposed to, I know the basic skills.
Right.
I know how to hit a baseball. I know it mentally, but you know what? You just freely playing, just like you play on the corner, when you were a kid.
But every time I've talked to you and every time I've heard you read things where you're being quoted in the newspapers and so on and so forth, you seem to have a great affinity for baseball.
Yes.
You have a lot of respect for baseball. You had the opportunity to be drafted as a baseball player. You went on and took the football career, had a standout career, eventually concluding with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if I'm not mistaken, you only played NFL football for one team. You stayed with Tampa the entire time. Okay, so let's talk about baseball. Let's take a little time to talk about baseball. Where is it now in our local community, particularly in the inner cities? Is it coming back? You guys, I remember all these little baseball teams back in the 90s when I was on television interviewing little teams. Do we have that kind of energy?
We need to regain some of the energy. I can tell you right now, because I've helped out with Dunbar Little League quite a bit. Shannon Royal right now is the president of Dunbar Little League. He's doing a great job of getting the numbers out there, getting kids excited. But more of our kids in the community definitely need to go out and play baseball. And when I even talk to my son about it, it's very easy to get swept away with the popularity of football and baseball. I mean, football and basketball, because culturally that's something that's very dominant in our culture. And baseball is kind of a distant third. But it wasn't that.
Right, I remember,
man. It wasn't that.
And I also remember that when I was growing up, and I didn't grow up here, I grew up in Collegeville housing projects in Birmingham. Shout out to everybody who watches my show, big supporters back home. I didn't play baseball. I went out one day and hit one of my buddies, and the ball, tried to do that little ball popped up, almost hit me in the face. I didn't know what but I'm not telling you about it. So I knew how complicated it was. Yes. But one of the things I do remember, that all those cats who played baseball back in the day, they played on the police athletic league. They would go out of town and represent the community, win championships. They all played other sports very well. They had great hand-eye coordination, and on the basketball court, they could go left, they could go right.
Right.
Tie that to baseball, this hand-eye coordination, how it seems to me that it is the great foundation of a second sport.
No, it really is. It's just, first of all, it's hand-eye coordination, and more so than any other sport, baseball and then basketball, is repetition. So a lot of kids are really attracted to football because you know what? You throw a football out there, and if you can kind of catch it and run it, you can go play. With baseball, you just can't walk out on the baseball field. It's something that really teaches you that discipline of, I have to kind of repeat, this basic skill over and over again for me to really be good at it. And then you develop a relationship with the glove, you develop a relationship with the way the ball bounces. It just teaches you a lot. And baseball is one of those games that's also mental.
Dude can't just walk up off the street and be a great baseball player.
No, you can't, man. It's
Same thing with tennis and golf.
And then more importantly, I always make
swimming.
I always make this point is, more than any sport, baseball has been a sport between a father and a son. A father first, very young, gets a glove, takes his kid out, gets his kid a glove, and they play catch. And we've lost, kind of a sense of that. My granddaddy was the one who gave me a, baseball glove, took me out, played catch with me, put me in, T-ball, and my mom was out there because she was an athlete as well with sports. So, and shout out to the mothers out there who were, also out there getting involved with their sons playing baseball. But, it is a game that was between a father and son. So it also represents a time where there were a lot of fathers and grandfathers at home playing with their kids.
How cool is it for us to be sitting out here in the middle of the community kicking it like this?
I love
just
it,
the idea of it, right?
I love it. It's nice. It's a nice breeze. It's a beautiful day, and like you say, the Easter, the Easter parade. It gives you a sense of pride, in our community.
We'll come back and hit on the Easter parade shortly. I want to go to you growing up in this community, like other inner city communities around the country. It's basically similar things that you and people like myself, we had to avoid to get to where we are in life.
No question.
We can move amongst our friends. We knew who were doing some of the illegal things as life went on. Certain illegal things start to creep into the community.
Yes.
Some of your friends start going left. You decide, I'm going to go this way.
That's right.
You have to deal with that peer pressure of not, in some cases, being ostracized.
Right.
In your case, very similar to in my case, we were standout athletes, so we kind of got a little break here and there, and they were rooting us on.
Right.
But just along the way, You know, I know you got spirituality,
Yes.
but what are some things that help you to avoid peer pressure?
You know, one of those things was reading. I always go back to a time where, you know, my mom really made it a point for me to read, you know, and to read books, you know, and when you get into a good book, you know, you're also establishing a friendship with the author of that book, and you're also in a way borrowing from the life of someone, you know, who you can't touch, you can't see, you know, but you have to have a certain trust, you know, there. And that alone is a practice itself, you know, that I try to teach kids. That alone is a practice itself that, you know, you're borrowing, you're able to, you know, rely on the information from another source, not having to touch that person, not having to actually see that person right in front of you. You know, you're developing a sense of trust. There's been some great people, you know, that lived before us. Obviously, number one is Jesus Christ, but, you know, Martin Luther King. I read his biography when I was a kid. I read Nelson Mandela's biography. You know, if I had an athlete that I admire, I read his book. You know, one of the first books I read was Bo Jackson's books.
Really?
Bo Jackson's book. I read his biography. It was, you know, he had a book that came out during that time. So I learned about his experience as an athlete. I learned about his experience on a college campus. So I always have to go back and say reading was everything for me. You know, my mom, one Christmas I'll never forget, she bought, and kids wouldn't know what these are, but it was Encyclopedia Britannica. She bought a whole shelf.
Yeah.
I don't even know where she got them from.
They dusty now.
Where she got the idea of buying encyclopedias,
Internet.
but, you know, at first that wasn't a popular idea for me, but they were there. So when I got bored, you know, you start to pop those open, you start to read them. So I learned a lot about the world. So when I traveled to Africa and I traveled to Japan and I traveled to Europe, I was already inquisitive about different parts of the world and different cultures. You know, I read the books about, you know, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, the Black Panthers. Like, I read those when I was a young kid. I was 8, 9 years old when I started to develop a love for reading, which developed a love for writing for me. You know, so I always have to go back for that. And, you know, and one of the things on my heart is really to actually start, you know, sort of a book club or a reading club, you know, for kids here in the area, because, you know, that's where all information, if we keep falling in love with what's said on TV, you know, or what's said and, you know, from different mediums, you know, that are always, you know, indebted to the community like yourself, you know, then we don't get, you know, we aren't getting the right information, you know, that can open us up spiritually and, you know, gives us kind of a holistic development that we need, you know, to be healthy. We need to be healthier.
So your ability to avoid crime, drugs, and those types of things, it came pretty easily because of the way you were just grounded from day one?
No question, because I trusted another source. So, it has to become a practice not to trust or just jump into everything right in front of you. You know, like when I could say, you know what, this person, whether it was Martin Luther King, like I said, Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, you know, different people, you know, and who had all different philosophies,
right.
You know, like if I could, like, you know, take part, you know, of what they were doing and make it a part of myself, you know, it's like I was reserving judgment on, you know, what life was all about instead of just taking it at face value because somebody in the community said, deal this drug, you know, go about your business like this. And now a lot of people in the community looked out for me as well now.
Yeah, I know.
You know, so it was a lot of people who in the right lane and a lot of people in the left lane, you know, that looked out for me and told me, look, you know, you got this going for you, do this. So that also was kind of wind beneath my wings as well. But I do put reading, you know, up there. I'm not going to.
You got the academics higher than sports.
Academics is first.
Okay.
Academics is first, and you know, like I said, I can't say that I was reading. I was an avid reader of the Bible when I was a kid. You know, now I'm, you know, now I'm born again, and you know, so that wasn't something that was natural for me earlier, but it was natural for me to read, which now makes it a lot easier, you know, for me to have, you know, what is my approach as a Christian, you know, into the world. So, you know, that was the seed that was planted in me early on.
And God bless you with a great wife, right?
That's right.
Alicia, I think is her name.
Alicia, that's right.
Now, did you meet her in college or in high school? How did that come about?
No, we met 1 year. We had mutual friends. We met 1 year after she graduated. It was my red shirt my freshman year in college. So we met through mutual friends of mine, Shadrika McIntosh, Erica Gilmore, were good friends, like sisters to me. We went to middle school together, and they put us together. We've been together ever since.
My man, the Dunbar Easter Parade. We're hit on that, and then we'll hit on what you're doing in high school, and we'll let you get on your merry way. But before we go to that, I want you to, it's not every day you'll get a chance to do this, kind of reach back in the recesses of your mind and think of some people, maybe 5 people so along the way that were big influences on you, help you to get to where you are today at the early stages of your life. And I'm sure they appreciate it, or their family will appreciate it if they're not around anymore.
Okay. Yep. Obviously, it's natural to start in your family, so I'll have to start with my grandfather.
Okay.
Who when I had the inclinations to be a bit of a bully, he beat it out of
really?
he beat it out of me. At a young age. My mother, obviously. My mother was everything. I played 5 sports when I was growing up.
Wow.
Besides the 3 that people know, I played volleyball as well as track. So she kept me busy all the time, kept me out of trouble.
That sports will keep you occupied and out of trouble.
And she was just a very spirited person. Most people always, every time that I'm around the community, she was a nurse for 30 plus years, and every time I'm around the community, I meet someone that she took care of.
Okay.
When she was, when they were children.
Right.
Also my uncles, my uncle Frederick and my uncle Bobby. My uncle Bobby was, if not the first, he's one of the first pharmacists here, in the community. My uncle Frederick, they both went to, Dunbar High School, were great athletes there. And they were, role models for me, as well. My older brothers, Sean, and my older cousin, Edwin Carter, who is now a principal at Pelican Elementary.
Had a nice little basketball game. Edwin shouted you out, but I did take you to the cup and lay y'all off with the left.
No question. Carl Burnside.
Yeah.
Carl Burnside.
Principal, Dunbar High School.
Tutored me when I was a kid. Even tutors me to this day. He's a guy that I talk to all the time. That I develop relationships that I lean on for information. He's a leader in our community. And obviously is a principal of Dunbar High School.
Microsoft certified, one of the top high schools in the nation.
A lot of great programs.
African American.
Coach Tim Maloney, who coaches basketball now and was my coach at Mariner, and coaches basketball at Dunbar, High School. Greta Campbell, who was like a second mother to me. All my second mothers out there.
Okay.
Shirley Curse.
This thing could go on.
Ernest,
okay.
Go on.
All right,
for a long while. Kyle Graddick. All my second mothers who were, in the class of, 1971, with my mother that loved her dearly and was always there for us. I really appreciate all of y'all.
I got to ask you this one question before we go to the high school. Do you have any political aspirations, man? You could be elected. Like everybody loved Ernest Graham. I had never met a person who didn't like Ernest Graham.
I don't really have any political aspirations, but
the community can use you, bro.
I kind of. Like early on, I'm in a position where I want to listen. You're older and wiser than I am. But when you get to this age, you just want to listen. You stop trying to be fixated on the picture that you have in your head, and you start to respond. So I'm just at a point where I'm just listening for direction from God.
You don't rule it out
over and over. Yep, over and over again. I've told myself I was going to do something. I was going to be somewhere. And I realized that I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Came back home.
I have everything that I'm supposed to have or ever will have, and that's enough for me. And if right now I'm appointed where I need to be appointed, and I feel like if it's another appointment, at another time that's needed, I feel like if I keep growing, I keep meditating on this word, I keep listening, that my job will get bigger, and if that's part of it, then that's part of it. But I believe that I believe just, again, I try to tell students just as a student of life and a student, I believe that I can do anything, and that's.
And I will tell you that answer that you just gave is the proper answer for a person who could have a bright future in politics. Let's move on. Now, you came back to Fort Myers from Tampa, and shortly thereafter you became a high school football coach, which everybody was excited about. And now you're a high school football coach at another school.
Yes.
Let's go back quickly and summarize where you were before and where you are now.
Yes. First out, I took my first job at North Fort Myers High School, which was a great job. I learned a lot. I jumped into the fire. Not having any head coaching experience, not having really any experience, just being hands-on with young men, being in a public high school, and sometimes you forget about the things that you went through or the things that you were up to when you were in high school, and and now all of a sudden you're in a leadership position, and you have to bring young men together, and you have to teach them how to be a team first and foremost. Then you have to teach them how to win high school games. And to be honest, there was parts of me that were overwhelmed. There were parts of me that was ready. Mostly in the first job, the parts of me were ready were the parts of me that that knew what sports was all about, that knew how to how to be successful and how to position myself on a sports field and have some success. The leadership part came along, and I was just responding to, a lot of leadership is responding to crisis, so you respond to crisis after crisis after crisis. And part of me was like having a realization that I was a bit immature, to be honest with you. And parts of me that weren't ready. So, you kind of go back to being a student of life. You kind of go back to studying. You go back to listening to your mentors again, those that, that your ego kind of takes you away from, in life sometimes, because all of us are guilty of it. The people tell you you're great and you've got this going on, and I get overwhelmed, so I don't have time to listen to so-and-so. That was the part of me that was really, really immature. And
when you're a head football coach, not only are you managing children,
yes,
you're managing the staff and a whole lot of other factors that come into that.
That's right.
But at the crest of that particular career, that particular high school, you ended up having, if I'm not mistaken, you went undefeated one year. Right. Yeah. Let's summarize that before we skip to the next.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were one of, I think it was like 8. I think one of 8 teams, to go undefeated.
What was that, like 8-0?
Yeah, we were 8-0 because two games got. 2 games got canceled because of because of weather, which I like to think we would have. I like to think we would have won those games. But it was a great experience because that was the first year that kids that I've had for 4 years that came in when take
a look on that. Make sure we got a visual.
My first year of coaching, those kids
got
were
visual.
seniors, and because of that, we had a culture that they helped institute. And that's what these young men have to understand is that this is their time, and they're helping institute, a culture and actually really help build in their dreams. And we're there, to give them wisdom. We're there to, lend a hand, but it's their time, and it's their team. So I had a group of kids that understood that. Shout out to Fanaje Gote and Joe Wilkins and Cameron Howard and a lot of different kids that were awesome kids.
And now you're
Colton McMullen, a lot of kids that were awesome kids that were fantastic.
Now you're the head coach at, if I'm not mistaken, a Christian-based school?
That's right.
What's the name of that school?
Evangelical High School. Evangelical Christian High School.
That fit right down into your wheelhouse?
That's right. Well, the timing is also perfect because, like I said, I took a year off. But one, because I needed to, and it wasn't about wins or losses in football. It wasn't about, it was about, I needed to take time out for myself because I was going through a lot and I needed to transition, really truly transition, from the first half of my life, in which I was, primarily an athlete. And I needed to learn some things about myself, and part of that came from, like I've said before, a mentorship with Jesus Christ, meditating on His Word, learning about myself, just taking that time out and spending time with my family. And then this job came about, the first trip that I had, through the hallways of Evangelical Christian, a lot of my anxiety that I felt like I accumulated over the years. Because if you're not careful, some of these things that come around, anxiety, depression, that we all experience. If you don't take that time out, that's when those things kind of creep in, and I experienced that.
Heart attacks and all kinds of stuff.
That's right. I mean, I was actually I was on the cusp of anxiety attacks and all those different things. And I didn't know quite where that stuff was coming from.
And you comfortable sharing that right now to the public?
I'm 100% comfortable sharing that. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, all those different things. I've taken medication for and all of that. I still take medication. We
don't know these kind of things. Yeah. This lets you know that it can happen to anybody, but you can come out on the other side of it as well.
Yeah, that's right, man. And this is real life. And I've always wanted to be a person that that deals with reality. And like I said, we have all these mediums. We have football, we have all these mediums, but for me, the greatest medium is Jesus Christ. There's no other medium, that I can properly develop through. And being able to be at a faith-based school, to be able to be at Evangelical Christian, it gives me that platform that I've probably naturally been craving. It's okay for me to say it, and it's part of the curriculum, and it's part of everything that we're doing. And I get to have intimate relationships that I want, that I want to have, because, primarily, I go on that campus and there is a preschool there, there's very young kids there, and there's a high school there, so there's there's kids there's kids and people that represent every part of the spectrum. So that I love, and I do believe I'm designed for, to be in a situation like that. So
what's the expectations?
I love it.
What's the expectations for a Christian school in Fort Myers, Lee County high school football? Let me say this. I'm thinking that if you at a Christian school, you may not. Is that a private school per se?
It's a private school, yes.
Right. So you may not have access to all the athletes that other people might have access to. Just kind of, who do you play against and that kind of thing.
I know you're gonna probably say it's my political side, but you know what? One thing I don't. This is not me patting myself on the back, but it's understand as it's understand that's a hand that works in all of this that you may not be aware of, but that we aren't always aware of. But when I took the job there during the time that I was at North Fort Myers, it wasn't my doing. There was, in terms of leadership, in terms of guys that I grew up with, guys from the community, myself, guys like, James Chaney, guys like Sam Brown, a number of other coaches that got opportunities that hadn't really been, represented, from the Dunbar community in terms of leadership positions. Guys like James Delgado, who ended up getting the job at Riverdale. There was a segment of our population, a segment of the community
black
that had
head
not
coaches
been represented.
But it's a lot of black head coaches now.
It's a lot of them now.
I think I heard it was 6 or 8 of you guys.
That's right. And for the longest, Larry
high school football coaches.
That
even shout his name out on TV. He got the sports TV show.
Andrew Layton.
Andrew, my man, who helped one of my assistant swimming coaches. Yeah. So it's progress has been made.
No problem. And I'm just for me, I'm just a person that's also a part of the community. Who opened that door. It doesn't really matter. What happened, and that's been something that's happened. I'm now at a job in which I know that I'm going to be charged to do other things. One of my experiences that I've had my own set of experience that came from the Dunbar community. I've had my own set of experience that came from the broader community of Fort Myers. So naturally there is something that I'm connected to that I don't always, that I'm not always 100% conscious of, that's always working, So, I do believe, things are being mended, things are becoming better than they were. I think, we know God is always working for good. And, me being there is, again, when it comes to football, I know that I've been doing it since I was 6, so in regards to developing players and playing football, it's just like breathing
second
for me.
nature.
Yeah, it's like breathing for me. And I always try to pride myself on, being in Lee County, there's been some great players. It's been, obviously myself and Javon Curson, Deion Sanders, but I'm just going to be honest with you. A lot of us weren't normal. I'm just being honest. A lot of us weren't normal, in terms of athleticism.
Right.
You can really pride yourself on what you're doing in a job coaching if you're taking that average to above average kid that nobody really saw, becoming a professional or really saw being highly productive on a football field. When those kids from this area that no one